For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss Gandhi and Mandela, a tentative interpretation. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
This column is about the two giant leaders of our history, Gandhi and Mandela. Can you briefly tell us how Gandhi is significant to our history in South Africa for those who might not know?
Well, Gandhi came out here as a young lawyer to represent a firm in Durban who had a court case. He was very shy before he came here, and when he had his first case in India as a lawyer, he was too shy to open his mouth, and then he asked someone else to do the case, and he then all he did was write legal opinions. But when he went to South Africa, when he went to Durban for this court case, and he wasn't politically aware, and he adopted some of the attitudes of the colonialists towards Africans, referring to them in racist type terms. And he was on a train from Durban to Pretoria, Johannesburg, then Pretoria, and he was in the first class carriage, and a white conductor threw him off the train. And on the way back, to get onto Pretoria, he had to go on a carriage, and he was made to sit with the baggage and things like this. And he asked himself, should he just go back to India, or was he going to do something about the rights, thinking then of the rights of Indian people? Because his consciousness then was not of a person who looked about all black people's discrimination, meaning non-white Africans, colours and Indians. And he decided to stay and did a lot of things after that. A lot of things adopted by the ANC later had been done first by Gandhi. For example, defiance, although there had been a women's defiance in Bloemfontein in 1913, but Gandhi had done versions of defiance a little bit earlier, if I'm not mistaken, but he broke the law long before the defiance campaign.
You also touch on their common characteristics. Can you elaborate on how both men were able to change in various phases of their lives, and why do you think that is important to leaders?
Yes, someone was saying to me on social media yesterday that she appreciated this comparison and this and the other. I don't think comparison is a very good way of understanding someone, because you try to squeeze them into boxes. Nevertheless, there are similarities. I would prefer just to deal with one and deal with their characteristics in depth. But as I understood my brief when I gave this as a talk yesterday, I had to do some sort of comparison. And changing is very important, because Gandhi calls his autobiography My Experiments with Truth. And he changes a lot because he says at one point, I don't say that I'm consistent. And you're right to point to a difference between what I said earlier and what I say now. But you must take my latest thing as what I believe, because that is my truth now. So he was willing to alter, and he changed a lot. His attitude to Africans became very different. When the ANC was formed, he welcomed it, and he formed close relationships with ANC people and a lot of other people involved in the struggle in South Africa who went over to consult with him. Mandela also changed a lot, from being a young Tembu boy brought up in the royal household, thinking that he had all the freedoms that were possible to imagine, because he was fairly sheltered there. But when he got to the Witwatersrand, he learned that to be a black person is not to be free.
You also touched that they both resisted oppression unto death. Can you also tell us about this important aspect?
You know, both of them analyzed. Now, Gandhi didn't read a lot of books and things like this, although what he read very intensively and went back to it a lot. So they were both thinkers. But unlike a lot of scholars, they didn't stop at thinking. They put their bodies on the line. Now, bodies is a very important phrase in the term, in the sense that it wasn't just an intellectual thing. They were prepared to have their bodies beaten, confined, or even be killed by the wounds of the oppressor. And in Gandhi's case, it wasn't the oppressor who beat him, but a Hindu nationalist who thought he was too conciliatory to Muslims, because he was prepared. Gandhi went on a number of fasts to the death, and he did a lot of these to stop intercommunal violence. Intercommunal hostility and violence. In Mandela's case, he was not immediately threatened with death, but I would say from the 1950s it became a possibility, and certainly when he got involved in MK he could have died, and when he was in the Rivonia trial they expected the death penalty.
What can leaders of our time learn? Because you also emphasize that they were never observers.
Well, I think the first thing about both of them, it's hard to learn when you've already become a crook, is to have integrity. So that it's quite hard to say to certain the very many politicians in South Africa who have become corrupt. It's hard to say to them, learn integrity from Mandela. It's a bit late because I think their appetite for more money is greater than their appetite for integrity. But I think for young people, not leaders, young people, see what you can learn from all of them. I myself went through a phase when I was a liberal, when I admired Gandhi, but when I got involved in illegal struggle and armed struggle, I thought Gandhi is no longer relevant. But Gandhi is relevant. Gandhi is relevant because getting involved in striving for freedom is a head and a heart matter. And both Gandhi and Mandela had their head and their hearts, their emotions, their passion, their commitment as human beings to, they felt the suffering of the people. And I think when young people, when they feel that something is wrong, they must try to understand it and deal with it with integrity.
You've also touched that Mandela was willing to listen, and Gandhi was also remarkable in his openness to Christianity. Can you tell us more about those?
Gandhi didn't become a Christian, but he didn't know a lot about Hinduism when he went to Britain, and he met a lot of Christians. And he was forced by his company with Christians who tried to convert him, took him to churches and things like this. He was forced by this to learn more about Hinduism. But he never lost his admiration and reverence for Christ. He had on his office in Johannesburg a large photograph of Jesus Christ, imagery of Jesus Christ. And when Nehru became Prime Minister of India, he said, "You now have the crown of thorns." You know? So he used Christian imagery a lot, and in that way he was very open. In Mandela's case, he at distinct periods he was fairly rigid, but if you look at his life from the time he got on the Witwatersrand and was involved in the ANC Youth League, he did change a lot. And I don't think he consciously said to himself, I must change. But when he was this very militant African nationalist, not prepared to meet with whites and all that. He was at the same time getting a reading list from some communists, and some communists in his firm who were whites and Africans were influencing him. I mean, there's a very, very moving thing which people are not paying enough attention to in Long Walk to Freedom. There's an African called Karl Khadebe in the law firm, and he says to Mandela, I am going to resign. He's a communist, Khadebe, and Mandela is anti-communist at the time. He says to him, I am going to resign from this firm because as long as I am here, they will never make you an articled clerk. So Mandela says, no, 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 don't resign, don't resign. He says, I'm going to resign, then they'll be forced to make it. And he sacrificed his own job to make sure that Mandela gets the opportunity. So that he found from his mixing with communists and from Indians and whites, from other political movements, that they had a commonality that he didn't appreciate at first.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Crema Media's Polity about Gandhi and Mandela, a tentative interpretation.